the first thing I have to say to everybody here today and watching is Happy New Year. And we expect it to be a good year. We have the opportunity to make this our 30th people state to state. So for 30 years, the advocates have stood out here, sometimes in really, really cold weather. Today is like a spring day in comparison to some of the people states in the state. But this gives us the opportunity as advocates to speak on behalf of the people that we represent that don't have the ability to come here and speak for themselves. We also do it outside because when this is done, most of us will be lucky enough to go inside and get a cup of hot chocolate. But many of the people we represent are actually on the streets day in and day out and don't have that opportunity. So the least we can do is talk about the issues and the priorities out here in the cold because we shouldn't be pampered as much as we do get pampered. This last election on a national level and a state level spoke loud and clear and basically said the way we do business no longer works and we have to really rock the house. And you can see that we have some legislators down in Washington, D.C. that are rocking the house and dancing in the halls of Congress. So that's a good sign. There'll be a lot of fun coming out of Washington and the state. We've gotten some wonderful elected state leaders also that we're very excited about. A bunch of young, vibrant women who are not going to take no for an answer. No, young, vibrant women who had to really fight very hard to get to where they are, and they're coming up here with an agenda to speak up. And usually when more women win and more women are in office, usually issues of families and children start to rise and get addressed. And when things that are done on behalf of women and families, it usually lifts the entire boat up for all of us. So we're incredibly excited about what's going on. We have so many issues that are under attack, but with the Democratic House of Representatives, we hope we have a good law that's going to stop bad policy from coming to the forefront. So, 2 weeks ago, Governor Cuomo did an address down in New York City, and in it he wrapped it around FDR's four freedoms, and he spoke about the freedom from want. And the freedom from want usually refers to the human right to food, the human right to health care, the human right to housing, a good education. And so it was very exciting to hear him frame this upcoming legislative session based around FDR and what we need to do to lift people up. So between the new Democratic Senate, the Assembly, and the Governor, we're expecting 2019 to be a really good year. And we plan, all of us here together, all the advocates will be working hand in hand with the Governor, with the Senate, with the Assembly, to make sure the issues that we care about are taken care of, which hopefully is really good for the state of New York. So what I'd like to do is first bring up Rashida Tyler. Rashida was a young girl who grew up in poverty. And as a young girl, her mother used to bring her and her sister to these exact People's State of the State events. And it really opened her eyes. And she's a brilliant young woman who's going to really shake this world up. She's already doing it in her local district and up here in Albany. I'd like to introduce Rashida, who is on the Executive Committee for Citizen Action. Rashida?
Thank you, Susan. And it gives me, I do have mixed emotions standing here in the 30th year of the People's State of the State Address. As Susan mentioned, I started coming to People's State of the State and other action on days when I was 7 years old. I started coming here really out of necessity. My mom, she put us on a bus every year and we would come to group to advocate out of necessity because she knew that we needed a roof over our head, clothing, food to eat, and access to a better life. And that is what we were advocating for. So every year we would come here to Albany and we would talk to people that we didn't see outside of an election year. And we tell them why they should not cut health assistance, why should they increase benefits to those who are poor and needy. And sometimes I felt that they were listening, and other times I felt that they weren't. And it seems to me, just from growing up, that every time we talked about social programs that benefit the poor, we were allocating income. But when we talk about giving money to corporate interests, to those who already have money, we talk in billions. And growing up, I could see that disparity, and I wanted to try and make a change in it. So that's why I continued the advocacy happening on Living. And that's why I stand here today, and why we're all here today. Because we know that state and you're investing in the future, and that you're making it stronger and better for everyone. I urge the legislature, this wonderful new legislature that we have, and I'm very excited and very hopeful for this year, to ignore the politics of scarcity, to ignore that which says that if you give to this group, they are less deserving than if you give to others. To give to everyone equally, but to also give according to need. Those who need the most should get the most attention from this legislature. And so I have the great pleasure of introducing the next speaker, Reverend John Palmer of the New York State Council of Churches, who will speak about the budget.
New Hope, New York's budget principles are an important guide for our lawmakers as they shape the state budget, a budget which can reflect our best values and one which enables the lives of all New Yorkers to thrive. Budgets are moral documents. They are an indication of what we truly value and what we deem important. But budgets are also moral documents in the sense that the degree they shape our values. They are an indication that centuries ago, there in your heart will be also. He didn't say that your heart in the right place and your treasure will follow. But where your treasure is, there will your heart be. So budgets not only reflect our values, in a sense they shape our values, they shape what kind of society we will be together. We will become better people and a healthier society by asking the wealthy to pay their fair share and driving resources for working families and the benefits of the most vulnerable among us. New Yorkers will become a better people with a more flourishing economy and a more flourishing environment by immediately beginning to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels and devoting more of our resources toward clean energy and renewable resources. New York lawmakers will shape the budget, but the budget will shape us and will shape what kind of society we will become. We're asking our lawmakers to help us be our best, to prepare a budget that will enable the lives of all New Yorkers to thrive. Our next speaker is Ron Deutsch, who is from the Fiscal Policy Institute.
Thank you. All right, here we are, the 30th People's State of the State address. I've been to 25 of these, and I have to say that, you know, it's good to be out here. We are freezing for a reason, I want to say what's most disheartening perhaps about all of this is that we're still out here year after year calling for an end and for our elected officials to address poverty in a serious way, to address food insecurity, to address homelessness. We've got some serious problems here in New York that we absolutely need to address. The governor talked recently about freedom from want as he was channeling his inner FDR at a speech. And there is a great deal of want in New York State. When you think about the fact that many of our upstate cities and areas in New York City have child poverty rates hovering around or over 50%, that's unconscionable. When you think about the fact that we've got nearly 90,000 or more homeless New Yorkers, we've got 3 million New Yorkers who are utilizing SNAP benefits and food programs. The list goes on, and it's time, it's long past time that we start to address these serious, glaring issues. So we're optimistic, right? The governor has put forward a justice agenda to start this year. We agree with a lot of what's on that agenda, but the time has come to really start investing. And one of the ways that we're going to need to invest is by substantially investing in child poverty, homelessness, food security, and other issues that have been neglected for far too long. So our hope is that with this new legislature coming in, right, we have a Democratic majority. We're looking to be the progressive beacon for the nation. So it's time to put your money where your mouth is. I would suggest it's also time that we lift the 2% state spending cap.
Yeah.
Right? This is an arbitrary cap that is not needed, and we need to make investments, and we need to invest in our human infrastructure in this state, not just our physical infrastructure or our business infrastructure. And it's also long past time that we take a serious look at our state's economic development programs that, quite frankly, have shown to be quite corrupt and ineffective, and it's time that we reprogram some of that money to serve communities that are most in need. So I want to bring up next a friend of mine and someone you all know or should know is the co-executive director of Citizen Action New York, Rosemary Rivera.
Hi, again, I'm the new co-executive director of Citizen Action New York. And today I want to take a moment and talk to you about voting rights and fair elections. This issue seems really far removed from the daily bread and butter issues that most working people and families focus on, but it's really not. After all, it is the domino issue that gets us to have a fair and safe system in the state, and which impacts everything from housing to criminal justice to education and homelessness, etc. We worry about the cynicism and the hostility to politics from so many Americans and wonder why our voter turnout is so low in so many years. We need a system that brings more people into the political process as voters and as candidates. What we need is a true democracy. That's why stronger voting rights and a small donor system of public financing will get us. In this new political climate, we have seen that folks like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez have frowned upon big money. We have seen a big portion of our new Senate also reject big money, and it's about time. A long time ago, I had heard a story about why money in politics affects us all. I wanted to share that really quickly. At some point, there were children's pajamas that actually had a chemical within them that made them more flammable. And so firefighters and nurses and doctors got together and said, you know what, we need to get this chemical, which doesn't do anything for pajamas, out of the pajamas of children. The actual pharmaceutical companies and the chemical companies began lobbying. Do you know that those chemicals are still in our children's pajamas? That does not need to be there. So, what I wanted to say is that many of us actually confuse access to power. But to achieve access to a legislator, I shouldn't be someone that needs to give them money. I should be able to have access without campaign contributions. Furthermore, with the matching system of fair elections, maybe we just might motivate people to get out and vote. I gotta tell you, as a Puerto Rican woman, I go to vote every year, and I am wondering, how many of these people actually think like me, look like me, or actually even understand my culture? Not too many, to be honest with you. Why is that? Because it costs so much to run statewide elections in New York State and across the country. So we want a system that removes big money influence in politics. We want early voting, we want automatic voter registration, we want big money out and voters in, and we want democracy for all.
Yeah.
So, next, I'm going to introduce Natasha Klenica to come up and speak. Natasha.
No one in New York State should go hungry. Do you agree?
Yes.
According to a recent Siena College Research Institute poll, 96% of New York residents agree no one in New York State should go hungry. Look around you today. Imagine. In fact, you don't have to imagine it. More than 1 in 10 people have had to make difficult choices. To pay their rent, to provide groceries for their children, to fill their car with gas to get to work, to eat. Nearly 12% of New York State residents struggle with food insecurity. meaning they don't have the resources or the access for enough adequate food for a healthy and active life. If we want our children to succeed in school, adults to perform well in the workplace, and seniors to not have to choose between medications and food, we need to work together to come up with solutions to ensure that people are not going without. Nearly 9 in 10 Capital District residents agree that government food assistance programs are necessary programs that address a social need. And we know that community food assistance programs like food pantries are critical to our social safety network. Locally here in our New York State capital region, there are 59,000 people who seek assistance from our 67 food pantries every year. Enough food for 3.3 million pounds of food is distributed through this charitable effort. But charity cannot solve this problem alone. Again, 90% of New Yorkers agree, actually 90% of New Yorkers agree, we should spend whatever it takes to be sure that no one in New York State goes hungry. 90% of people agree with that. It's time to listen to New Yorkers. No one should go hungry, and we need the political will to make this happen. The time is now. Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce Mark Haney, the Director of Metro New York Healthcare for All.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Haney. I'm Director of Metro New York Healthcare for All. We're a coalition of community groups and labor unions in New York City that work together for healthcare justice and universal healthcare. When it comes to healthcare, New York has a long history as a leader state with support from both sides of the political aisle. Our Medicaid and child health insurance programs are among the best in the country. Because of our state's robust implementation of the Affordable Care Act, our general uninsurance rate is now less than 5%, less than 2% for children. Insurance premium rates in our individual market dropped by 50%, and that market has roared back to life from a mere 20,000 participants to now more than 400,000 New Yorkers. We congratulate our state leaders on these accomplishments. However, over 1 million New Yorkers still remain uninsured, and many of the rest of us struggle to afford our premiums, deductibles, and copayments, to pay for our sky-high drug prices, to get the proper care we need from very narrow health insurance company networks, which get skinnier by the day, and we often have to fight with our insurance company bean counters to get the services and drugs that we need. Clearly, the status quo is not acceptable and change must happen. The good news is that New York can build on our proud history, and we can keep moving forward toward true universal health care. We're here today to call on Governor Cuomo and our state legislature to invest in that goal. In the short term, we call on them to provide funding to community-based organizations, to reach out and find those who are still uninsured, to increase financial assistance programs to help people be able to buy and use health insurance, and to expand our state's existing health insurance programs to all New Yorkers, regardless of their legal documentation status. In the longer term, we call on our state leaders to craft a fully universal health care program that guarantees comprehensive, quality, affordable, accessible, and accountable health care for all the residents of our state. We urge them to take up the New York Health Act, a landmark bill sponsored by Senator Gustavo Rivera and Assemblymember Richard Godfrey, as the template to work from and to work toward. We stand ready to enthusiastically work with them on such an effort. In this past fall's elections, everyday New Yorkers sent a message to our nation and our state's leaders. We want action on healthcare, and we want it now. Poll after poll showed that healthcare was a top issue for us voters, and that for voters who voted for the victors, healthcare was among the top issues of why they voted the way we did. We hope our state leaders hear that message. We urge them to act accordingly in this year's legislative session that starts tomorrow and in the state budget that they will be crafting in the coming weeks. It's now my pleasure to introduce Jasmine Gripper, who's the Legislative Director with the Alliance for Quality Education.
Hello, I'm Jasmine Gripper, Legislative Director for the Alliance for Quality Education. We know the federal government is experiencing a shutdown right now, but we are expecting our New York State leaders to lead and govern and be effective and efficient in our upcoming state budget process. We are tired of our children and families in schools not being a priority. We need to make sure that our schools have the funding that they need to succeed. Every year, students are told that their path to success is dependent on them having a quality education. But how do they have a quality education when they attend schools that are crumbling? When they have schools that don't have access to internet or computers? When they don't have AP courses, art, or music, or even gym sometimes? We are tired of a system of haves and have-nots when it comes to education. We need a high-quality education in public schools for all students across the entire state of New York. And in order to do that, our state needs to fully fund its own formula, the Foundation Aid formula. According to the State Education Department, our schools are owed $4 billion. We need that money, and we need it now. We're looking for the governor, the assembly, and the Senate to pass a budget that fully funds schools across the state. Thank you.
Yeah.
Next, we will have a lifelong advocate and friend, Mark Evanation, from the Capital District.
So the minimum wage went up a couple days ago, and that's really good news. And there's some lessons in it. When the 200 fast food workers went out on strike in New York City many years ago, and they said we want $15 an hour and a union, everyone thought they were crazy, and that would never happen. People actually, many advocates at that time said you should be fighting for $10 an hour over many years, and that's what's possible, and that's what you're fighting for. But they didn't want that, they fought for 15. And I'll tell you something, in 21 states the other day, they raised the minimum wage. But in 21 states. But 20 states still have $7.25 an hour, the federal, which hasn't been raised in 9 years. And Puerto Rico suffers with $6.55 an hour as their minimum wage. So that's one lesson of it. Another lesson of that fight is that the $11.10 an hour that we have now in upstate New York is still poverty wages. It's not even $24,000 a year. There's no possible way you can live on it in any part of New York State for a family of one, let alone a family of four, which is a federal poverty guideline. And as we know, there's millions of New Yorkers living in poverty. So there's a lot of jobs. Every day I see people saying we got jobs and no one to fill them. Well, that's because the jobs that we have do not pay living wages.
That's right.
And we need living wages that provide a decent standard of living for the people that are working these hard jobs. And we need unions to fight for that, that's my opinion. But besides all of that, we need to have people here recognize that $11.10 an hour is not enough to live on. $12.50 an hour is not enough to live on. And the $15 an hour in New York City is not enough to live on.
That's right.
So we're going for living wages, and I think that it's time to remember that we're fighting for what we want and need, not what we're told is possible.
Yeah.
My dear friend, Reverend Dustin Wright, the president of the New York State Council of Churches, is next.
How could I follow up after Mark? So much, my friend. So I'm gonna make this quick. It's a little chilly out here. So here's the deal. From a New York State Council of Churches, from a faith perspective, when we're talking about a budget, we're, you can call it a progressive budget if you want. That's not really a good way to think about it. From our perspective, it's not a progressive budget or it should be a conservative budget, but rather a boldly moral budget, right? Right. And one of the best ways you can do that, of course, from my Christian perspective, is to read the Bible. But the really sweet thing is that you only need to read the first page to learn about what we're talking about. So I'm speaking partially about protecting the climate, the preventing climate change and protecting the environment, but really Over and over again, on the very first page of the Bible, God creates, and God calls creation good. He sees that it's good, and we ought to help keep it that way. And that near the end of that first page, he talks about how folks, us human beings, ought to care for and how we're completely created in the image of God as well. And so that's why it's so important that in this upcoming budget cycle, as we develop a deeply moral budget, that we care for our environment, that we lift up the legislation for like the Community Climate Protection Act, and also that we do all these other things as well that help everyone live fully into being people that are children of God. And so I'm so thankful for all these advocates here, and as well as all folks here to just cover this important work. With that said, I'd like to also invite Mark Dudley forward, who is the chairperson of the Green Education and Legal Fund.
So this is the 30th year that I've stood here for the people's state of the state. And when the Hunger Action Network and other groups started it 30 years ago, it was because the issues of poverty and hunger and homelessness were never addressed in the governor's formal state of the state address. And all those issues we've heard here today are still of concern. But in recent years, we've also added on the issue of climate change. And that is because in New York State, in the United States, and across the planet, it is poor people who are the principal victims of climate change.
That's right.
They're the ones that are forced to climb on the roof of their houses as the waters, lap up to the second floor. They're the ones who are forced to flee their homes when famines hit. They're the ones who are forced to run when the wildfires come. And so it's been very exciting in the last month or two to see people like our new congressman from New York City, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, talk about a Green New Deal. Something that even Governor Cuomo is now talking about. And we really hope that when Governor Cuomo releases his budget, that the Green New Deal that he is talking about is similar to the Green New Deal that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is talking about. And that is worldwide mobilization to deal with climate change by 2030. The IPCC said we have 12 years left for humanity to take unprecedented worldwide global action so that we can save life on this planet. The idea that we now talk, not in science fiction, but on our day-to-day work with scientists, that there's a possibility within this century that civilization as we know it may end and that human species may go extinct. Frightens me. It does not appear to frighten the people, though, in this state capital. Hardly any of the news reports I have seen have put climate change at the top of the list as to what state legislators plan to enact this year. We want the Off Fossil Fuels Act, 100% renewable by 2030, but we also want the New Deal part of it, which is what people here talk so much about. We've got to make healthcare a human right. We have to make college free. We have to increase funding for education. We have to expand access to affordable housing, healthcare, single-payer healthcare. And as we saw some of the protests in France, we are going to win the struggle to deal with climate change. It must be combined with the struggle to win economic justice.
That's right.
Everybody.
That's right.
We need a just transition. We need to ensure that existing workers and communities that are dependent upon fossil fuels are taken care of. We need to target the funding for these programs, climate change action, to the communities that are most vulnerable and the most disadvantaged. So I hope that the governor's Green New Deal gets a round of applause from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and I'm sure she'd be willing to consult with them on it. Up next, we're going to hear from a longtime advocate that I've worked with a lot. He's We do a lot of work together on welfare rights. Not a minister yet, but he is a community lay minister at the Unitarian Universalist Church. Rob Smith of Interfaith Impact.
Thanks, Mark. Thank everybody here who stayed here in this cold. I know I'm going to see you around the Capitol too, because you're all advocates, and you're all going to be talking with the legislature. And the great thing about this legislature, guys, is that for once we're going to get a warm reception inside as well as outside. Tell you, we have the years going around meeting with the leaders of this legislature, and the Assembly has been pretty good. The Senate has been waging a war on the floor. Think about it. 40% of the kids in Schenectady, food insecure. It's a human right. They're right. How do you know New York is one of the most wealthy countries in the world? If we were a country, we would be right there up in the top 20. We can afford this. We can afford to craft universal health care insurance for everyone. We can afford to give people a place to live, to let everybody vote. Come on, let everybody vote. We can change this. There's so much we can do. We can change the revenue stream. We've given a pass to the wealthiest people in this state. They are not paying their fair share. They should. And there are many ways to craft that. If you ask Ron Deutsch and the Fiscal Policy Institute, he'll tell you. We're in an emergency situation with the climate. And do something about that. Don't give up. We can do something all green by 2030, right? Yeah. So it's a matter of spirit. Don't let the people who have been waging war against the poor get away with it anymore. Ask the hard questions. You will be going in and talking to them. You will be talking to people, finally, who are running the Senate, who probably agree with you. That's great, but they may have difficulty crafting that legislation. So make sure you're pushing your legislatures. Push them to do the right thing and to support their leadership in getting these bills passed and getting them crafted in the right way. And that's all I've got to say. Yes, we can do it, and we're going to do it together, guys.
Hi, everybody. So that wraps up the 30th People's State of the State. Hopefully, if we do the 31st, we'll actually be just celebrating all of our victories, as opposed to, asking, for a voice. And I just want to point out how, everything that we talked about, when Citizen Action talks about voting, as we talk about housing and homelessness and whatever, why it all matters. And it's become crystal clear to me, as we talk about the fact that we have maybe 12 years left to try to make some kind of change. Just think about if Al Gore his election wasn't stolen from us because of all the voting irregularities and stuff. Just think of the difference where we would be with climate right now. We certainly wouldn't be talking about the fact that we have 12 years left if we had a president back in 2000 who actually believed in climate change and was in the forefront of it. So if we don't get the right people elected, who care about the issues that matter to people standing here, we're just going to keep fighting and fighting. But this last year, people did come out. They voted for the right people. The right people are now in charge of the state of New York, from the governor to the Senate to the Assembly. We can get things done. We have people down in Washington who are speaking up, and they're not letting the old white men get them scared and tell them to shut up and sit down. They're saying, no, women after my own heart. So at the end of the day, hopefully we have a really good year. We're not going away. We're going to be here. We're going to be fighting. We're going to be working. We're going to be accomplishing. And thank you for standing out in the cold with us.